Hello.
Welcome to a new venue for us this time for Two Big Egos in a Small Car. We've taken that journey north to the 77th Edinburgh
International Film Festival.
And this year mainly based at the Cameo, and we're just up the road from the Cameo. And with us today,
We're
Mark
in Bennett's
Cousins.
Bar, a famous old bar next to King's Theatre.
Do you have any bad, embarrassing past Bennett's experience
I have
to
not got
regale
too
us
drunk
with?
in Bennett's with anything silly.
Thank goodness for that. Well, we shall say welcome to Mark Cousins, our guest for today.
Well, we had the great pleasure yesterday of going to the Edinburgh International Book Festival at the Futures Institute at University of Edinburgh, and it was a Q&A between Hannah McGill and Mark Cousins, both former directors of the Edinburgh International Film Festival. And Mark, of course, was the VIP guest because he is, and has been for quite a long time, one of Britain's greatest filmmakers. In theory, he's a documentary filmmaker, and he's won awards all over the world for long-form series like The Story of Film, Women Make Film, but he's also very famous for individual passion projects of a slightly poetic, free-flowing nature, which have become increasingly popular and successful. Films like The Eyes of Orson Welles, I'm Belfast, My Name is Alfred Hitchcock, The March on Rome, and his forthcoming new film, A Sudden Glimpse to Deeper Things, about the Scottish abstract expressionist artist Wilhelmina Barnes-Graham, which is premiering at the Edinburgh International Film Festival next Wednesday. And so he was there talking about a book published by the Irish press called Dear Orson Welles and Other Essays. And Mark being Mark had the good grace and charm to tell everybody that he wasn't sure about his own writing, and while he felt good in filmmaking, he wasn't sure he was a writer. Then he proceeded to do an extract from the book about Orson Welles, where he imagines talking to Orson Welles. And the extract was so poetically written, so engrossing, so entertaining, and so beyond normal film criticism as to make a mockery of his previous statement. So how did you come to write the book, Mark?
I've, as you say, Graham, I've been a reluctant writer for a long time, but sometimes something that I've worked at it. You know, when you're not good at something, you work at it, and I've got better. You know? So in the book, there's over the years, I've just been trying to, when I'm in a hotel room, when I'm in an airplane, just to put down my thoughts and about filmmakers, about directing, about travel, about aging, about a range of different subjects, you know, and trying to use those. When you're a filmmaker, there's a lot of downtime when you're on your own. The solitude is really interesting. So I tried to use that solitude to think about cinema, and so that's what's come out. That's the result is this book.
It reads like someone who isn't a journalist, who isn't a normal film critic. It reads like a man who understands great fiction. So was the book written almost in a wonder, or is a lot of rewriting and thinking and coming back to it?
Well, I'm not a journalist and I'm not a critic, you know, so I have never really gone there, you know. To answer your question, it wasn't written in a runner, written over a number of years in between times. I say at the introduction to the book, this is what I do, what I'm not doing, what I do. You know, and my daily life, my bread and butter is making images, and therefore when you're not making images but when you're hungry for a certain creative experience, then you can sit and write, and that's what happens. And often, I don't know if you feel this, but I feel that there isn't enough time to work out what you think about something, but when you sit down and force yourself to write, then you do work out what you think about Nicole Kidman or Orson Welles or, you know, Agnes Varda, or the people that I write about. And so I've enjoyed that process. It's like, it's updating myself.
You raise questions and don't answer them quite regularly, both in your films and in the book. And that's something that normal journalists in general don't do. And I've been recently reading Christopher Hitchens' and Yet, book of essays about culture and politics. They're brilliantly written, but they're written like a man who's trying to explain everything and trying to answer every question, and who's well aware of the people reading the essay and wants to make an impact on those people, i.e. it's not poetic, it's not great writing, it doesn't leave space for the reader to think. When you write and when you make films, you always leave space for people to think their own thoughts. Is that deliberate? Are you aware of doing that?
A little bit, you know. I mean, I think Hitchens is a polemicist, you know. He's really trying to provoke a thought process. Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm more influenced by, you know, a writer like Emerson. I'm very interested in trying to capture what it's like to be alive, you know, not to sort of change things, change the world. I'm just trying to capture the bizarre mystery of being alive and trying to be alert and not get ground down by the daily existence, you know. And so cinema is great in that, you know, because cinema is such a life force. It's a kind of pick-me-up. It's a kind of, I always say, you know, when we look at a big screen, you can almost get vitamin D from the big screen, even though you can't, you know. That nourishing quality, you know. So I'm always interested in the nourishing, and in this book, I think I've circled around that question of why is cinema so nourishing as we keep an eye on ourselves, as we get older, as we love we feel love and loss, and as we get happier and sadder, you know, cinema's always there, and that's really, you know. So I've always trying to chat that.
That nourishing thing. It's interesting. You sit in the front row.
Yeah.
When I go to the cinema with Celestine and the last ticket's available in the front row, her reaction usually is, "Do you want to go? It's in the front row." And I don't think probably she's alone in thinking that. Why do you like the front row?
A lot of people, I go into an empty cinema and people are sitting in the back row, and I think, well, why? It means that visually it's roughly the same size as your TV screen at home. You know? Whereas and some people are detached, and they like detachment, and they like a kind of cool analysis of something. There's nothing cool or analytical about me. I want the massive, the biggest experience. I want the mosh pit. I want the overload. I want, you know,
more
bigger
emotional at the front.
It's more emotional
visceral at the front.
and it's also, you know, when something's really, really big, your brain feels a bit flooded and overwhelmed. And so you know, it's more sensory, physical experience, and I want that. Obviously, I've got a brain of sorts which can then analyze the experience, but I always call cinema the affordable sublime. Here we are in Edinburgh, my local cinema, the View. A ticket is $7.99. That's, you know,
still manageable. Unlike fish and chips.
Glass, you know, a fish and chips is more than $7.99.
Exactly, it is now.
And if you sit at the front, you can have this big, overwhelming experience for $7.99, which is
it's
not bad.
also proper art sometimes in a populist setting. So when people went to see Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey in 1968, and it was a big hit. It was a commercial film.
It was huge.
It would have blown some people's minds because it asks questions, then doesn't answer them.
And it takes you into an abstract space almost, you know, like it's a trippy film, isn't it? You know, and I think that whatever our daily lives are, and our daily life is not easy, but a bit of us always wants to go beyond ourselves, you know, to experience something not normal. That's why a lot of people are interested in cinema, and that's why a lot of people are interested in religion, or a lot of people take drugs. You want a kind of transformative thing, and 2001: A Space Odyssey did that for a lot of people.
If you're aware you're watching a film, when you're watching a film, the film isn't good enough. You should stop thinking about it as being a film. That's how it should work.
Well,
because it's sensory.
Sensory and world building as well. You know, you want to go into a world, don't you? You know, which is, you know, it's got some elements you recognise, but also like just a place you've never been to before. That's why you go on holiday.
One of the things
that's very true.
Yesterday,
that's why I go to Blackpool.
Yesterday there was a series of questions that were asking about where can we watch things, and we were reflecting on this today and thinking, there's still a difference, if you like, between going to the cinema and being in a group of people. And yes, it's good that things are available on YouTube, but there is something of the more personal one-on-one experience. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's interesting. I mean, if I hear music, I tend to prefer to go to a concert than listen to an album, because I'm sharing it with other people, and it's just a reminder that we're human beings. Where do you feel about that now? Because obviously, increasingly, in order to be able to watch certain films, you probably are going to end up watching on YouTube and on your own.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say that definition of the movie going experiences is that we laugh together and cry together. Not for me. I have to be really honest. For me, watching a film is much more solitary than that. I just feel I'm on my own, and it's me watching a kind of dream state. I tend to go to the pictures in the morning or the early afternoon,
which is again not conventional.
There aren't many people. Not as many people there. I'm not a misanthrope. I like other human beings. You know, I really like other human beings. So it's not that I don't want to be with them.
No.
It's just that I've never ever bought that idea that I want to share the movie with other people. I just want totally solitary, rapturous, dreamlike, erotic.
But on the big screen, preferably.
Yeah.
I like a bit of both. I generally do.
Yeah.
It's great with an audience, but then I will get a Blu-ray of a cult film from the 1670s, either European, American, or British, and I'll watch it alone when my wife's gone to bed. And it's just me in the film.
For me, the definition is not Homer. It's when you go to the movie on a big screen in a cinema, there's no pause button. You know, you cannot pause, you cannot rewind, you cannot go and make a cup of tea and come back. This is the definition of cinema for
Which
me.
makes it an intense experience.
It means that it's a submissive experience.
Yeah.
You're saying to a filmmaker, here's 2 hours of my time, do something. I have submitted my control to you. That's for me the definition of it. It's not that it's a social experience, although that's fun, or it's not that it's bigger than life, though that's crucial. It's that I'm not in control. And how often does that happen?
Not very often.
Very rarely.
Not while sober, no.
I mean, in some ways, since COVID, when people started watching things at home and were breaking off and going and getting drinks and crisps and whatever, the rhythm of filmmaking seems to me, and in theatres as well, people are not, this idea of whether they're behaving as well as they used to is a debating
Big
point.
thing in theatre, isn't it?
But the rhythm of how people are watching things now seems to me to have changed, and I'm not sure that's entirely beneficial. I like that thought of submission.
Yeah. The number of times I've got a message on social media saying to me, I'm halfway through your new film, and I want to say, well, why are you messaging me?
Why are you stopping?
I agree.
I don't want to know that you're halfway through. Anyway, of course you can watch things in bite-sized chunks, whatever, but there's certain part of us, all of us, that wants to be out of control.
Yes.
And just to feel something, obviously in our lives, especially if you've got a job you don't enjoy, you feel done to all the time, so actually at the weekend you want to be in control, but there's something primitive in human beings that wants to say, I don't know what's happening here. I'm lost. Take me by the hand, sort of.
It's like you've been captured by a spell.
Yes, exactly. I mean, hypnosis. Cinema is a kind of hypnosis. And in my work, that's why I record. When there's a voiceover in my films, I record the microphones right up, like I'm going to do this now, in your camera, really, really, really close. So you want to be. It should feel a bit hypnotic.
The horse whisperer.
And if something's hypnotic, one of the things about hypnosis is you have no sense of time. It could be 2 minutes or 20 minutes or 100 minutes, so you're trying to get into that zone. I remember talking to David Lynch about this, that you remember the beginning of Blue Velvet where you drift into the story and you think, we're in a timeless place here. So he's really interested in that, capturing that hypnosis.
Yeah, I was going to say that your mind looks forward the whole time, and you're making films since the late 1980s.
Yes.
But you don't look back, you look forward, keep on changing, keep on developing, keep on working hard. I'm a bit of a historian, always looking back. So I remember when I first saw it in 1996, and I thought, here's someone who's directed the Edinburgh Film Festival, who's writing essays in the programme, talking about the ideas of the films, not about what the director did last, what the caliber actor is, but what's the idea behind the film, what's the idea and how the film is made. And I thought, this is amazing. But then I noticed you were also very good with people, and then beyond that I noticed you were also had a sort of like natural understated flair for mild flamboyance in public.
Yes, of
and
course.
I thought,
Mild flamboyance, I love that.
How often
a bit of kilt.
A bit of kilt.
How often do you find someone who combines all three attributes? And I think those attributes show up in your films and in this new book, Dear Orson Welles, and other essays. You cannot be categorised as one thing. You combine at least three different approaches the whole time.
Oh, thanks.
And that means that both in your writing and in your films, I have no idea what's coming next. I have no idea what you're going to say next. And it's like you're on a journey trying to discover something, but you're not entirely sure what the end point's going to be.
Well, that's good. Thank you very much, Graham. I'm very touched that you say that. I think in the book at one point I say a film, the ending of a film should never be seeable from the beginning.
Yeah.
There has to be always some kind of occlusion or blockage or surprise. And I think more generally when you're doing anything, we can learn from showbiz that idea that you are a performer. The audience wants a surprise. It wants a bit of glamour. It wants a bit of seduction. It wants a bit of challenge, all those kind of things. So if what you say is true, and it's very nice what you say, then I'm very aware of trying to surprise people a little bit.
I'm not comparing you to Orson Welles because
even
though I think you're a great filmmaker, that's possibly
All's Wells.
I would agree with you on that, my friend.
Orson loved Hollywood, but what he did went beyond and around Hollywood. And you also aren't some academic, intellectual, deliberately doing something art house. You're a mainstream person who doesn't happen to follow the formulas of the mainstream, and that's the joy of your movies and of the new book.
Yeah, well, thank you. And maybe, when we were young, I'm sure I'm older than you, but when we were young, there was the mainstream, and then there was the fringe, the avant-garde.
Yeah.
And I think those boundaries hopefully are blurred quite a lot, And if you look at the multiplexes at the moment here in Edinburgh, not only are they showing, Deadpool and Wolverine, they're showing
which
Indian cinema, which I love. They're showing
I wouldn't have thought you loved that film.
Why?
Well, it's such a big superhero fantasy, big Hollywood production.
But people, well, as you just said, I'm the opposite of an academic. I love, like, the very first words in the Dear Orson Welles book are from Shania Twain. So I've always been interested in.
Do you want to quote those words, Mark?
Get in the action, feel the attraction. I think is what it says. But it's, you're always into like pleasure, and. I've forgotten the name of her. There's a great academic, where she talks about the arena of contradictions where pleasure and reality embrace. Isn't that a lovely phrase?
Good line.
So you want to do something deeply pleasurable and entertaining, but also you want the best of art, I think, to have a kind of reality shock as well, and you want both.
Great art isn't hard work. People look on great art sometimes as hard work, but I don't think it should be.
What about the making of it?
Well, the making of anything, as Mark knows better than we do, is hard work.
So it's the swan on the surface, but there's an awful lot of paddling going underneath.
That's true. Well, I think it's true. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, I mean, it depends, if you think of musicians and writing songs, somebody like Elton John says he can write a song in 15 minutes, You can hear the melody in your head, like Tiny Dancer was written in half an hour, and it's a really good song, So it's not always necessarily hard work, but what you're trying to do is tune into a frequency, and once you've got the frequency, once you can hear the song or see the film, then you've got it. And some of my films, like you mentioned The March on Rome, I could see that film fully in about 15 minutes, like the structure of it, the different chapters in it, and often that happens, so it's not necessarily.
How some humorists start with their punchline first and they work backwards into how to construct the joke.
Yes.
With an essay.
Yes.
You'd always start at the start, or would you have actually made your mind up how you wanted to finish first?
Always for me, I've got the structure first completely.
Right. Okay.
So any of these essays in this book, I've got a piece of paper, it might be A4 or it might be a lot bigger, and I've drawn out the structure, scribbled it, almost like a blueprint. And once you know the beginning, and once you know how you're going to surprise the audience, and once you know your conclusion, then you think, basically that's the work done. Hitchcock talks about this, that's the work done. All you have to do is then make it, which is sort of the easy thing. So every time I've written anything, I don't know, let's say there are 40 essays in this book, I would say every one of them would be the same thing. I've sketched it and then stick it on the wall with a bit of blue tack, and then play around with the structure, but once you know where you're going to, once you know what your conclusion is, then you can have fun.
It also saves a lot of rewriting.
Exactly. I never rewrite. I don't think I've ever.
So you never rewrite?
Wow.
Never rewrite.
I mean, modern journalism invariably doesn't allow time for rewriting.
Yeah.
But that's interesting with an essay that you don't.
Rewrite.
That's interesting.
And even in the films, the first cuts are usually 95% there, maybe 98% there. There'll be a little tweaking for legal reasons, but there's no changes. And the reason it's not because I'm some kind of genius, far from it. It's because I've already worked out the structure. And if you haven't got your structure, then you're searching in the dark. But I'm never searching in the dark.
At the Harrogate Advertiser, I now write 30 stories a week because I have to.
Wow.
So I used to, when it was a big feature or important news story, rewrite and restructure. Now I have to write it in one pass, otherwise I haven't got time. Which means before I write, I've already worked out the structure.
Well, then you understand exactly what I mean.
Exactly, yeah. But you've got you're working on a film about Linda Miles, the pioneering, brilliant director of the Edinburgh International Film Festival in the 1970s, and you've also got a film out next week at the film festival, A Sudden Glimpse to Deeper Things, about the Scottish abstract expressionist of the St Ives School, Wilhelmina Barnes-Graham. The interesting to me about it, and I haven't seen the film yet, is that myself and Charles bravely tiptoe into gender issues occasionally in a very scaredy-cat, cautious fashion, because it's very easy to accidentally get yourself in trouble. But it strikes me that this is someone whose art, because she had an exhibition, I know it's the late Wilhelmina, she had an exhibition in Harrogate 2019 at 108 Fine Art by the Scottish gallery owner Andrew Stewart, who was a great man and sadly died in 2022. Fantastic man. He had lots of links to Edinburgh and the Edinburgh art scene. He had an exhibition, I think, at Dovecot Gallery, Edinburgh. Well, he put that exhibition on, and I prefer her work to Ben Nicholson, even though he's great and he was a big figure in the St Ives School, but she's not as famous as him. I also prefer the art, or rather the sculpture mainly, of Barbara Hepworth to Henry Moore. Barbara Hepworth is not as big as Henry Moore. There's a great Scottish artist from Falkirk, where I was born, called Elizabeth Blackadder. And myself and Charles saw her exhibition at the Scottish National Gallery last summer, and I was completely blown away at how brilliant it was. And this woman, who I'd never heard of, was the first woman to be elected both a member of the Scottish Royal Academy and the Royal Academy in London, and I'd never heard of her. And I thought, there's a pattern here. Great female artists being underrated, underrepresented, and hiding in the shadows. Have you got any viewpoint on that since you've made a film?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are the obvious reasons that, that the art history is written by people like us, white men, middle-aged white men, so that's part of it. There are other reasons, like Barbara Hepworth, I have to say, was an interesting character in that, she was Queen Bee down in, so she wasn't, I don't think, shall we say, fully supportive of other female artists. So we can't only blame men. Men are a lot of the problem. It's not the only problem. There are other issues as well. In the case of Wilhelmina Barnes-Graham, she was spiky, outspoken, but also sort of shy. That did not go down well with the art establishment. She didn't sell herself very well. She was. And back then, and they all through art history, if you could sell yourself, then you got on. So yes, there's a lot of gender and feminism here. There are also more personal issues. Wilhelmina Barnes-Graham was neurodiverse, and so also that might have made it a bit trickier for her.
Strikes me that male artists are allowed to be badly behaved, and they become legends. But badly behaved female artists get flack for being badly behaved. There's a different standard of judgment.
That's true. I mean, there's the phenomenon of the punk woman, obviously, as well. I think that another thing about Willie Barnes-Graham was she was posh. And she lived through, when it came to the 60s, what was the ideal? It was the Beatles, the working class man,
Michael Caine,
all that sort of stuff. So the fact if you're posh, that didn't help either.
No.
So it's complex. It's
especially
not just,
if you didn't pretend to be working class. She could have pretended to be working class,
but
which
she
obviously she
definitely
didn't do.
No, so there are lots of reasons, and we obviously mostly blame the right and conservative people for this sort of stuff. But we also can look, if we consider ourselves people of the left, we can we can blame the left
Yeah.
for being blind or having its own stereotypes about what creativity is. You know, you want a angry young man, but what about a non-angry, older, posh woman? You know, it doesn't really
doesn't
fit
tick any
the
boxes
story,
for male
you know.
critics.
No, or for critics in general. You know, female critics as
If
well.
we look at her work, 2024 perspective, as opposed to when she was making the art,
Yes.
the appreciation of her art, has that changed, and is that something that you look at in the film?
Yes, I do. She was quite big in the 50s. She had a golden age in the 50s, and
Yeah.
then David Bowie had owned 2 of her paintings and things like that. And then she went out of fashion in the 70s, and then here in Edinburgh in the late 90s she had a retrospective, and that's where I first saw her pictures. So what I love about her is that she wasn't a dedicated follower of fashion. She didn't try to be cool. She didn't try to, you know, be on the latest current trend in art. You know, she just did her own thing. She was driven, like lots of really great people, like sort of had a kind of internal engine, and was slightly oblivious to the external art world. You know, I think she cared. You know, she set up a trust to represent and her work and create a legacy for her own work, and so. So yes, she cared about how she's remembered, but still was a bit of a lone wolf. She kept referring to herself as a lone wolf.
Right.
Any artwork is work, but everything you do seems to be a personal passion.
Yes.
Does that mean that you can like get up one morning and a place will suddenly inspire you?
Yes.
Or a person or an idea? Is it?
Yes.
Can it be anything at all that happens to catch your fancy that moment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly that. You know, I think that, you know, you don't know, an idea can come from anywhere or everywhere, and it can be a tiny thing or a big thing. You know, it can be the Olympic Games, or it can be, you know, the falling autumn leaves. It doesn't matter. You know, you just want to be open. You just want to be open to experience, and so you just don't know what's going to happen next. And the danger is, you know, the word there is open. You just make yourself available, like make sure that you're noticing things around you. You know, I know an awful lot of filmmakers who talk non-stop, and obviously you're asking me questions, and so I'm talking, but I tend to be a listener rather than a talker, and so you have to you have to dial yourself down in order to see interesting things, I think.
The new film that's coming out next week, A Sudden Glimpse to Deeper Things, I think that's getting quite a big release when it comes out officially after the...
I think so, in October
Yeah.
in UK and Ireland it's get a decent release, and then it's playing in quite a few other countries as well. You know, it's documentaries are hard to get into cinemas, but hopefully this one will have at least a small impact, you know.
And have you got any other projects on the go apart from the fantastic selling one about Linda Miles?
Yes, the Linda Miles finished and premiered in Edinburgh last year, and so I've got a big new project called The Story of Documentary Film. So I've been filming around the world, and it's going to be a 16-hour film, really looking back at what documentary is and trying to question what we know about documentary film.
And of course, the Edinburgh International Film Festival started off mainly as a documentary film festival.
Yes, it did.
In its origins in 1947.
Yes,
So
it did.
you've never. I know you live in Edinburgh, but after your tenure in the 90s involved with the film festival, even though you've travelled the world and still do and make films in different parts of the world, wherever you've got a passion, you've never pulled the rope from Edinburgh. You've never managed
No,
to
I love
slip.
it here. I love it here. I mean, this is totally home. This is my harbour. This is my shelter from the storm. It's the place from which I sail. In a way, you know, I think it's an extremely important part of my life being here. It's a small city. There's lots of things going on. You know, it's not too hot. There are no mosquitoes. You can drink water.
No
from the
midges.
tap.
More to the point.
No midges. All that sort of stuff. But also that, you know, I just feel, and I don't live in the posh bit of Edinburgh either. So it's really, I can't imagine my life without Edinburgh.
You said an interesting phrase yesterday about looking elsewhere, and it's interesting. You know, you feel rooted in Edinburgh, and it's a beautiful city to be rooted in. I spend most of my time in New York, and I think there's lots of parallels between the two cities. They both punch above their weight in terms of size.
Absolutely.
But that's the interesting thing, though, that you encourage everyone to look elsewhere, by which I mean I'm making that link between you can be based in somewhere, but you travel all over the world with what you do. And you do always look elsewhere, and that's an interesting philosophy in life. And we can become streamlined, and some people, and what goes with that as well is that sense of closure, that some people just linear thinking at all times, and they close. You are both open, you look elsewhere, and you like dancing. And I think these are three significant things. You like dancing, a wonderful form of expression. English people are so tight and awkward about dancing, as we know. So it's interesting to have those philosophies.
You had a great line about Mark and his style of writing that involved dancing. What was it, Charles?
I did suggest that you dance with words, which I do
You're
think
a dancer with words.
Lovely.
Dancer with words.
But it's that philosophy, looking elsewhere, being open, and having the spirit of dance, Mark. They're interesting things in life.
Yeah, the looking elsewhere and being open is, there's a lot of xenophobia in the world, right, and a lot of hyper-nationalism, and people think their country's the best in the world, So if, you travel more, you realise that there's greatness everywhere, and people are quite a lot the same in many places, So it's quite humanising and it makes you hopefully a bit humble if you travel a lot, and I'm lucky enough to travel a lot, So that's a key thing there, and the dancing thing, it's just a matter of getting out of my head, I'm not, I think that if you only live, I'm not a brain in a jar, if you only live in your thoughts, then you're missing a lot of stuff, and dancing away is a kind of recalibrating yourself.
The whole body's involved.
Well, I think that's a good way of finishing, to end up on something physical, away from all the intellectual.
Flatter yourself, Graham, intellectual.
Yeah, intellectual chart. But Mark Cousins, it's been an absolute joy and pleasure to have you here in Edinburgh talking about your work and Edinburgh itself. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub-production.